guys, this is the Rant Corner here, and today we are going to be reviewing Awake. And this is the third studio album by Dream Theater, continuing the Dream Theater discography. This album is probably most notable as being the album after Images and Words, mainly because Images and Words was their basically prog metal's golden child of the 90s. You know, this is probably the album that sold the most copies. You know, Pull Me Under was playing 3 times a day on MTV and VH1, and so the pressure was on for Dream Theater to make something that would precede Images and Words. And Awake does that in some ways, but at the same time it doesn't, and I think it doesn't necessarily live up to Images and Words, but it certainly comes pretty damn close. This is also the last album Kevin Moore would be on, the original keyboardist for this band, who was on the first 3 albums when Day and Dream Unite, Images and Words, and Awake. And I especially like Kevin Moore because he's more creative than he is he's less virtuoso and less maddening carousel kind of style. You know, that's the style that, you know, Jordan Rudess has, the current keyboardist for Dream Theater, and he had a very harmonic and melodic way of songwriting, which I think is why the first 3 albums kind of had a power metal Nightwish sort of sound, but at the same time keeping it progressive through different influences such as John Petrucci, Mike Portnoy, and John Mayung. Speaking of keyboards, I'd like to talk about the the keyboard and guitar chemistry on this album is fantastic, especially on songs like Innocence Faded and Caught in a Web, you know, songs of that nature. So, how about we stop talking about keyboard and guitar chemistry and start talking about the actual songs themselves. The opening track on this album is 6 O'Clock, and 6 O'Clock starts out very rapidly with a drum beat that is pretty much unforgettable by most. You know, when you think of Awake, the first thing you think of is that drum beat. It's quite famous in the Dream Theater discography. And this is a very good song. It's very, has a rushy kind of sound to me. It's not too flashy, you know, it's not quite as power metal, it's more progressive and aggressive than anything else. The next track on this album is Caught in a Web, and Caught in a Web is probably my favorite song on this album because, one, the keyboard and guitar chemistry works extremely well on this song, and James LaBrie's vocals aren't quite as gritty on this song, because a common staple with this album is that James LaBrie's vocals are extremely rough and gritty, you know, like, especially on 6 O'Clock. You know, it's quite apparent on 6 O'Clock. And you know, songs like The Silent Man are pretty much the opposite of that for the rest of the album. The next track I want to review is Innocence Faded. Innocence Faded is a fantastic song. It's, you know, it's very, it starts out relatively rapidly, and, you know, the thing with this album is that, you know, farther you get into it, it starts to become a little bit slower, but the first 4 or 5 tracks, it's, you know, just friggin' going and going. You know, they're building some serious momentum throughout this album. And then, you know, they're building momentum, they're going, and then they're slowing down once they get to The Silent Man, which is the acoustic song on this album. But let's track back a little bit. Let's track back to Erotomania. Erotomania is the instrumental on this album, and it's wow. I don't think it compares to the Yitzy Jam or like things like the Dance of Eternity or Stream of Consciousness, but I think that it plays its part, especially in Awake, because Erotomania leads up to the track Voices, and it's a double track, which I think Erotomania leading up to Voices is a kind of a good way to, you know, bring out the song much better. And speaking of Voices, yeah, Voices is a pretty damn good song. It's most of it is in 9/8, which it's kind of hard to headbang to, but it's possible. Trust me. The next song I'd like to talk about, you know, I like to talk about, you know, the latter songs in the album now, you know, like Lifting Shadows Off a Dream and Space Dive Vest. You know, these last 2 songs are songs that you don't necessarily hear all the time in Dream Theater shows, especially Space Dive Vest. I think I heard Space Dive Vest once in a live DVD and in a show, and it was on, I think it was on Score. If I were to rate this album, I'd give it a 8 out of 10, and the reason I say that is because in comparison to other albums, it is pretty damn good. I think it definitely lives up to Images and Words, but it doesn't go beyond it. And without a doubt, it does not go beyond Metropolis Part 2. So 8 and a 10 is probably my final rating for this album. And that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, rate, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you later.
6 o'clock on a Christmas morning.